Cool. All right, how's everyone doing tonight or today? I don't know. Depends on where you're at, I guess. What's up, Cookie? Appreciate the likes. What's up, Shy? How are you? How's everyone's Sunday treating them? Just got back from soccer. What's up, Joe? What's up, Kev? Thanks for the likes, man. How are you, sir? You in the thick of it right now? Getting ready for the season, or you guys still chilling? Still like off-season time for you guys. How are you, Mr. Joe? I'm tired, man. It was tough. So it was like pretty hot out there today. And the sun was just draining me, man. It was like tough to run today. Oh, nice. Worked up until 7:30 East Coast time. It's tough to work on Sundays. Sundays have always felt like a day off kind of day. But I was at the restaurant though. It was a good money maker in the mornings, especially during football season. So a couple workouts each week, spring break. Nice. So kind of gearing up then. Um, Dude, for us it's like so we go pretty hard from shit, man, about February, end of February through May, and then it's like summertime, and you're still training and whatnot, maybe a couple tournaments, and then we like jump back into it and just boom, really from September on to like November, and it's like winter season. So, and if you're like older, like that's high school time, we'll take a little break, but the youngers, we'll find shit for them to do. So, done with your homework, got a good workout in, made some dinner, no complaints. Come on, we can find some complaints. You just gotta try harder. You gotta be like so many of our fellow Americans. Yeah, so it's a busy time in theory right now. I like summers because there's no, we don't got to worry about the rain, man. So it's easy in that sense. But, anyways, game plan tonight, as usual, probably talk about why the U.S. sucks. Um, a little more nuanced than that, of course. But like the more and more, I kind of go into these things and talk about these things with people, and I try and learn more about shit and look into history, beyond our own society and whatnot. It seems a lot like just so many of the pivotal kind of the words, the concepts, the things that we place a lot of value in within this country are just kind of mythical. Played in a charity poker tournament today. Dude, I suck at poker, but it's so much fun. What's up, stick person? How you doing? Right. All right. Appreciate the likes. But yeah, so that's kind of the game plan. Just kind of look at I don't know, man. Probably go off the comments, look at some things in history. Something I always find kind of interesting is just people really take free speech, for example, right? Free speech is something that people really place a lot of emphasis on, right? When you're talking about why they think the United States of America is so great. Look at our free speech standard, right? Look at what you can say. And I actually think there's some truth to that, right? Because what you say should reflect what you think, and we should be able to have freedom of thought, right? To some extent. But one of the really interesting things to me that kind of helped me kind of break from my perspective as like a conservative or someone who kind of had like even a centrist view was looking at the jurisprudence and the expansion of our free speech rights so oftentimes and how that happened and seeing that there was a big kind of foundation laid in the late 1800s, but really in the early 1900s, right, by a lot of liberation movements, socialist movements, right, the women's suffrage movements, anti-war movements, right, anti-capitalist movements, and there was a pretty hard level of suppression, right, and use of sedition laws and things like that to try and suppress the anti-war sentiment and right labor movements, things like that. And it's really interesting seeing how the scary socialists were a big part of why we have part of the free speech standard that we do today, right? And so I think that there's a reason why that works so hard to try to rewrite and bury history is because if you look at history and you look at the things that have led to progress, it always is the liberation. I don't want to say always, but almost always is the liberation movements. The very people they teach you to be afraid of, and they say that they're the bad guys, right? These are the people that push so many of the things that you enjoy in your life, the progresses that you do see compared to the past. Like those are the people giving it to you, man. So, I'm losing my voice today. Too much yelling at soccer. If you play center back, you gotta yell at people, man. You gotta tell people where to be. Everyone likes to stand. But yeah, what do you guys think? What, any fans of the USA in here? Anyone on the wrong team? Because remember, man, it's not even about team, right? It's not about like this country's good or this country's bad. It's just a recognition that the second, no matter how good a country is or isn't internally, the second you place some kind of serious emphasis on a strict, rigid border, right? You're starting to put a lot of limitations on what your society can look like in terms of movement. And I would say like movement is the one of like most like pivotal kind of things when it comes to freedom, right? As individuals, no one should be restricted to where they can go on a planet that like none of us like choose to be on because of like where they happen to be born. That's kind of like, to me, that's like radically like just unjust, you know. So I think oftentimes when you're talking to people that like really kind of like push back against the concept of like borders, for example, to me that's like a red flag. It's like, damn, like you really got some like probably some xenophobia to work through, because like why are you so afraid of like the idea of like other people coming here, whether it's just like, you know, to visit or like work or live here? Like what's wrong with that, man? um, because in reality, when we are abroad, right, as a country, what that usually looks like is our State Department, right, our foreign policy apparatus, our military, right, because we got to make money for the military-industrial complex. And so, like, our activities abroad usually look like appropriation or just straight up terrorism. And so maybe that's just us projecting on the people that we harm, right, who usually have to flee their homes because of the destabilization that we play a role in, right, if not just outright create ourselves. So a lot of the times, like Americans have fears about people. It's just hardcore projection, right? We're just pushing our own behavior onto people. But that's kind of always been a thing of white Jesus, right? You could probably trace it back to Christianity. I'm not even gonna say Yeshua, man. I don't even think that's fair to Yeshua. That's probably just was some dude who really was anti-corporation, anti-state. You know, was probably about it, right? That's why people fuck with him in the time. That's why they probably killed him, right? But then, you know, of course, people deify motherfuckers. Just look at this app right here, dude. Just look at how people treat their favorite TikTok creator, right? Like, oh, they could do no wrong. They're fucking perfect. It's like, that shit's weird, dude. It's like goofy. Like, I put my foot in my mouth all the time. Like, and then you just try to get better. So there's no doubt about it that I could see how people would deify some, like, you know, just like really fucking like authentic human being. But anyways, yeah, I probably like think this all comes back to really like for us in this society, Western civilization, the United States of America. Like I'm gonna keep talking about this. I do it almost every live. Is it comes back to probably the intersection of Christianity and the Roman Empire, right? The Roman Empire was already expanding. It was already militaristic. It was already kind of going in and appropriating shit, right? And so the mechanism was there. Christianity intersects. Now you got an even nastier version of it because you know how motherfuckers be when they're attached to their gods. So. Also, thanks for sharing the live, guys. Thanks you, TJ. How's it going, man? Um, Thanks for the likes, guys. Also, check out my Substack if you like the lives. I do a little bit of writing. The link is in the bio. I do think I post some decent shit, if I may say so. And comment there, you know. Thanks, Mazzy. I appreciate that. Also, you know, I know it's kind of difficult, right? There's an advantage from me speaking and then you guys kind of being limited in the comments. But if you have pushback, criticisms, questions, I do try to bounce off you guys. And if I don't know, just say I don't fucking know. Thanks, Shy. Yeah, so check out the Substack, guys. There's some decent stuff there. Right now I'm posting about twice a week, I'd say. About. Usually like kind of some short form poetry and then some kind of like short analysis on some shit. You know, the stuff we're talking about here. So, and then we go live 2 times a week. Sundays and Thursdays, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Most Sundays, sometimes I have soccer and it conflicts and, you know, I got to get my outside time. But usually we're here. What's up, Bear? How you been? So yeah, appreciate you guys being here. Tonight I didn't really have a hardcore plan for the live. Just figured it'd be easy to kind of, you know, kind of push some of my anti-US sentiment. Because a lot of it, like, here's the thing, man. We can pull up the numbers, we can pull up the data, we can pull up the research, we can pull up all these good and important, and they're not unimportant things, right? But I think that when you look at the world, when you look at the legal system, when you look at the Constitution, when you look at all these, like, you know, the UN, all these different, like, contracts here and treaties here and this here, it's a lot of bullshit, man. It's a lot of fucking just fake layers that these regimes or governments don't adhere to themselves, corporations don't adhere to themselves, right? If they do get in trouble, they just pay it off, right? So I think morality is actually pretty fucking simple. We lie about that shit to make ourselves feel better about what we are not doing in the moment, honestly. And this applies to me, right? Like I can think of so many things that even probably today I could have done better, right? If you go back through and you think about every interaction you had, was every one of them your best foot forward? And so something I'm kind of, I don't want to say annoyed with it because I think there's a lot of people who are like obviously correctly pointing to the overt fascism that it's like unmasking itself right now in our society. But like you're not going to fucking fix that shit in a day. You're not going to win that battle in a day. And so I think for a lot of us, especially in the heart of the empire, right, who don't consider how pervasive fascism is across our society, I think instead of thinking about how can we win this fight and some kind of like long-term vision of it, just start with what you can do day to day, just in the moment to combat that shit. Because this is like, dude, if fascism is predicated upon like these deeply structured oppressive mechanisms, right, that are meant to facilitate this really fucked up version of hierarchy where some people have and a lot more don't have, right? And when you don't have that, it's like an inherently violent process, right? Um, where's I going with that? Yeah, I just don't think we recognize how pervasive it is in our society. Like even like a simple comment that seems like just like a joke, if that joke's rooted in some form of oppression, that's a fucking point for fascism, man. Like y'all are waiting for like not y'all, but like we're all waiting for like them to like sprout horns or some shit, and it's like it's not an individual person or thing. It's like it's the moments, right? It's the moments that we say nothing. It's the moments that we hide from. Um, so like at this point in time, if you don't already like if you're not already Rocky, like I don't have any family members that I still like talk to on the regular that I'm cool with that are Trumpers. Like that's not even possible given how I live my life, how I am moment to moment. Like that just we just couldn't coexist like that. One of us would have to like agree to disagree. And I'm certainly not gonna fucking say that I like agree to disagree on human rights. And they're culty ass motherfuckers, right? But I'm not gonna make that shit easy on them. So anytime I see them, it's just intellectually at their necks, you know? So why are Democrats so unpopular right now? Because they're deeply just fake product. So the Democrats think that it's enough to just point at Republicans, right? The Democrats like, hey, man, Republicans are so bad, you should vote for us. But like in my life over the last 30 years, it seems like things are kind of going down, right? For the most part, with like moments of up, right? But a kind of an overall trajectory that's down. At some point in time, you can't point to like being better than them when you also like work with them on so many of the foundational things that fuck everybody in this country. Some people obviously more than others, but if you look at the things that make the USA and that have always made the USA, what difference is there between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to their views on capitalism, for example, when it comes to their views on corporations, for example, when it comes to their views on police funding, when it comes to the military industrial complex and our foreign policy and things like Israel, when it comes to things like Yemen, and you can keep on listing shit throughout the decades, right? And like this is not to discredit or like not point out the differences because there are differences, especially at the state level, especially the local level for people, right? Obviously, when you look at something like the Supreme Court and shit like that, there's differences. These things do matter, obviously. But I think a lot of the problem people are failing to recognize is the Democrats offer a fake product. If you say you're going to oppose Republicans, then you actually have to oppose Republicans. You can't shake their hands and vote on the same shit with them when it comes to a lot of the pivotal things impacting Americans. And like you can do it, but a lot of us just recognize how fucking fake it is, and we don't want to keep giving our vote to fake people because it's just a, you know, so. Yeah, they played. Wait, yeah, well, that's what they are. They play too nice, right? So was it good vibes? So because when Democrats have power, they play too nice and get nothing done. There's a lot of truth to that because that's what they are. They're the nice guy within politics, right? Liberalism is nice, you know, like civility and like we're gonna talk about shit. And we gotta respect everybody, and you know, everybody come to the table and talk. Yeah, there's some things in life called like contradictions to even the best values, supposedly, right? And a lot of that assumes you're already in like an equitable society with access and inclusion, right? But let's just jump past all that fucking shit, right? Which is like wrong because obviously we don't. But let's just go with it, right? Like, so their concept of equality has to already ignore a lot of the foundational fucking inequities, right? A lot of the foundational oppressions that we see. And they're just like, well, if we slap like equality on the back end of it, it's all going to be fine. But, you know, do nothing to address the root issues. It's just not realistic. Apply that same logic to anything you do in your life, and it's just not going to fucking work. The only question is, what's the timeline on collapse? And I think that's what a lot of people, in my opinion, fail to realize is Democrats and Republicans both offer a death march to collapse. There's just a way different timeline on that shit. And like that was really, I think there was a truth to that when I was growing up, and it's even more apparent like now with Trumpism because we don't have Republicans and Democrats anymore. We have Republicans and Trumpers right now. With a few people within the Republican Party that used to be a Democratic Party, there's still like decent people trying to fight against that shit. But most of these motherfuckers are corrupt as hell, and they shake hands with the same people. They get a lot of their money from the same people, and they believe a lot of the same shit despite what they fucking tell you because their actions say something completely to the contrary, right? Like Democrats, let's be honest, are cheering the fuck out of Cory Booker, who gave us 25 hours of what? I'm like, what did he actually give you? What did he block? We want to oppose Republicans, right? Republicans are the big bad fascists. MAGA, make America great again. When was America great ever? It wasn't, because it was founded on genocide. When did the genocide end? Never, right? So like we recognize it when pointing at the fucking overt fascists, but why can't we recognize that we still attach ourselves to the same symbols, the same aesthetics, the same beliefs as them in so many ways? Like Democrats don't realize that they talk about people a lot of the same ways as MAGA, just not as cruelly, like not as overtly, a little more kind of sly. That I don't know what to tell you, right? So, because 2 days later, what did he do? We got to fucking oppose them, right, guys? Oh, we guess this is an important time in America. We got to oppose them. 2 days later, he's doing what? Shaking hands with Republicans. 85 members of the Senate Say, hey, you know what? Let's keep giving money, weapons, and bombs to Israel. $8 billion worth, right? Bernie Sanders introduces 2 resolutions to try to block that shit. And 85 members of the Senate, including good old Cory Booker, does what? They shut that shit down. What do you call people who are committing genocide? What's the fucking word for them? What's the word for people who commit genocide? Like, we're a society that is like built on genocide, that's been maintained on genocide, and facilitates genocide to make sure that our corporations can keep fucking eating, so we get the fucking consumer goods that we want at a cheap price. Like, what do you call that shit? That's the problem with Democrats. That's the problem with liberals, is they'll point at it sometimes, but they don't fucking ever even act on what they point for the most part, and they are not willing to look at how they themselves play a role in all this shit, because it's structural, man. And they like the structure. That's why they're freaking the fuck out, because Trumpism is not a maintenance camp like conservatism or liberalism, right? It's not post-Reagan neoliberalism, right? Trumpism is just destructive as fuck, dude. It's a regression level politics, and they are scared the fuck by that, because that represents true chaos. That represents the system actually fucking shaking, which is why they also don't like fucking quote unquote leftists, because leftists want to do the same shit, but it's different, right? What you have to understand is Trumpism is just pure fucking destruction. But anti-capitalism, right? Abolition, revolution, right? These things, that's also a deconstructive process. But there's a massive difference between righteous, principled, and calculated and strategic deconstruction versus just a fucking tantrum, reactionary, destructive process that Trumpism is, right? And liberals are afraid of both of them because they like this shit. I don't know what to tell you, man. Yeah, they're soft fascists, Larry. Just learned of a Jewish senator from Hawaii who supports burning bills. That's awesome, man. And that's the thing, is because there's so many accusations of anti-Semitism when you're an anti-Zionist, but so many amazing Jewish people who are being erased within this conversation are absolutely anti-Zionist themselves, right? So Zionism requires a level of Jewish erasure, because there are so many Jewish people that do not support Zionism, that do oppose Zionism. So I actually dropped a piece about that, the absurdity of Zionism, on my Substack. Check it out if you want. It's pretty quick. So something I try to do, even when I do like an analysis piece, is I try to be pretty quick about it, because I think that, again, we can dress shit up in complexity to act like there's some nuance that's not there to make ourselves seem smarter, or ask these profound questions. But a lot of times it's as simple as like, do you want to share shit with people or not? And you can fucking find a lot of ways to rationalize not sharing basic survival needs with people, and we do it all the time. That's what capitalism is, right? The economy has to be competitive. Competitive by definition is win-loss, by definition. So if like the so if like accessing survival like goods, right, and then dispersing survival goods, or like creating that shit, is going to be a competitive endeavor, by definition, someone has to win, someone has to lose. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Like, so we can let them dress it up how they want, but it's a bunch of fucking bullshit, because the foundation is clearly predatory. When I'm in a competitive mindset on the soccer field, that shit's predatory. That 50-50, I'm not going to go fucking shake their hands and say, hey, you do want it? I'm going through that motherfucker. I want to win that ball. Like, so like to imply, to put that mindset into our economy, which like we all have to share in to fucking survive, is wild. We need a Mao Zedong. You know what, Vibes? I got to read more about Mao. My dad's actually a big fan of Mao. He keeps telling me I got to do my homework. Um, so that's definitely an area of neglect for me. Can't really speak too much on Mao, to be honest. But honestly, I hesitate to speak on China a lot, because I just think there's so much fucking bullshit back and forth, misinformation. So I try to just stick to what I know. I can talk about the U.S., Iran a little bit. I think Israel's a pretty easy one, to be honest. I don't really believe in Israel anymore. Like, it doesn't mean if shit coming from me. I'm just one fucking jackass out in California. But I don't recognize that. That's for sure. So, yeah, as always, appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate the likes of the live. Appreciate you guys sharing it out if you do. Remember, we don't got the big money of an Elon Musk, right? We don't got the big advertisement money. All we have is word of mouth, right? Good content, word of mouth. You're trying to use our numbers. So, speak on how you would say is funding genocide. That's what we were just doing, Hope. That's what we were just doing for about 20 minutes. The USA has always been genocide. It's almost synonymous with it, right? So, I don't know who Brandon Sod is. Thanks, I guess. Later, Run. What's up, Run? Yeah, I mean, to Hope's point, so, like, we can kind of run it back through again, but and it's something like our friends, we've been talking about it, and many people before us have been talking about it and pointing it out, right, from oppressed to marginalized groups. But like, you got to ask yourself at one point in time, because like we do this thing where a lot of people disconnect the past from the present, from the future, and they analyze these things in isolation. And you can't understand any of them in isolation because it's like cause and effect, and they're all intertwined, right? The past informs the present, which sets the stage for the future, right? And so like to disconnect them is just nonsensical. Um, so like when you have like an understanding of United States history, which is why they work so goddamn hard to muddy the water with that shit, right, and try to distort what actually happened, even eliminate what happened, right, in favor of their engineered, fucking manufactured, manifest destiny, Look, and it wasn't slavery, it was like whatever the fuck they were calling it, man. It's just so sick and perverted. So, um, yeah, man, it's kind of scary when you realize like growing up as a kid, you think like that truth just like wins no matter what, but it doesn't. Like so much of this comes down to power and like what we're willing to kind of concede in the moment. Um, and in the USA, we concede so much because of convenience. It's a big problem, man. Something I'm trying to work on. So maybe if the Roanoke colony weren't hostile to. That is a reference over my head, Ash. Makes it feel sick. Where our yeah, man. It's fucked. I don't know what to say, right? It's like fucked. Like it's really difficult to survey like the landscape, survey the world, right? See footage of what's happening, hear people's stories, hear people's cries, hear their fucking pleas, right? Um, I don't know how the fuck you could have a heart and a soul and hear that shit, come across that shit, and like not want to do something different, especially like when you understand that we really are the heart of the destabilization. Um, like something we got to understand is like we're the apex predator of imperialism. Like we're the best at it. It's like the most efficient version of this shit ever, right? It's the most dangerous version of this shit ever, just by nature of the technology it has access to, right? Um, and the window might be closing on what we can do about it. And so that's kind of my fear, is that technology is only as good as the people that use it, right? It can be utilized for amazing things, right? Inclusive, beautiful things that really promote like this collaborative, collective kind of sustainability, or it can be utilized the way it's been utilized for the most part of our kind of, I'd say, modern-ish history, right? I mean, more than modern history, but like the last 2,000 years, the last couple of millennia, right? So, and that's kind of what's difficult. Basically, indigenous people would have shot. Oh yeah, Ash, yeah. Because that 100%. That's kind of what it comes down to, man. There's a lot of cultures, a lot of people, a lot of societies, a lot of ways of doing things that are just collective, like sharing, helping, support, like. And that's not our culture here. Never has been, man. And that's why, like, we talk about it with our friends, but that's why even something as simple as, like, hey, you got to build community. Because, like, obviously, if individualism, and that's kind of also, I think, a big problem is, so, like, let's say you finally kind of break free from the system you're offered, right? And you're like, you know what? I'm going to ask some questions for myself. I'm going to be a critical thinker. I'm going to be a free thinker, even. What a daring process. Um, that's scary, man. You got to kind of, like, let go of, like, the information you were given that you would tie your identity to, right? And that kind of gives you some assurances, and to acknowledge that that connection might be wrong, dude. The way a lot of us build our sense of self, all of a sudden we might be criticizing ourselves in ways that we don't want to. There's a level of fragility that we have as Americans because of our American exceptionalism and just how great our society is, and we're this beacon of freedom, right? And our ancestors just did such great things. They fought this great empire and yada yada yada, right? And it's like, we really fucking attach ourselves to this fake ass myth and think we've done something. So many of us, at least, right? Which is why any kind of progress. I mean, that's kind of low. I don't want to make that leap. That's a big leap. I'll pause there. If the next Democrat wants my vote, they better run on fixing this mess and jailing people. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, there's just things I'm not gonna like compromise on anymore when it comes to who I'm gonna vote for. Because for me, like these things I'm compromising are have massive effects on hundreds of millions. I'd say even billions of people, honestly, right? So it's like I'm not compromising on that shit. And there are things that I think I would compromise on, right? But I'm not going to compromise on human rights. But I would compromise on pathways to get there as long as that shit's insured, right? That looks different, maybe. So we can flip who's in power. We could, Justin. I mean, like, I know it's like kind of a silly what if, but we literally could. We can spread information. We can spread communication. We can connect with people. We can talk to people in ways never before. Like never before, man. Just the last 20 years, the ways that we can link up and spread an idea is, dude, think about even like 500 years ago, right? Let alone like 50 years ago. Um, we don't use it, bro. Like, I know I like my cat videos and shit too, right? But we don't use this shit like to its potential in terms of like trying to help people. We really don't. And like, let's be honest, a like doesn't mean shit. What the fuck, like, what the fuck does that offer? And I say that as someone who like needs people's likes, like my shit. But like, let's be honest, what does a like offer in the grand scheme of things? And that's not to discredit like trying to promote engagement and push good ideas, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a war of information, and I think that a lot of people like really discredit how important the online sphere is. One, the online sphere is a way to get more people involved in ways they might not feel comfortable when it comes to offline spheres. It's more accessible. It kind of lends itself to more inclusion, which would, in theory, start to kind of build a foundation that could lead to a more equitable kind of diversity, right? So I think this like separation of online and offline is a little bit silly. It's not some binary. They're both like interconnected. They're both life. They're just different spaces with different pros and cons. And we got to start using this shit a little more effectively, And that goes for all of us. So that's why my lives look a little different than they used to, right? Used to take months or years to send a message. Yeah, and now it's just like that, man. 100% Justin. Cookie says, I'm only voting for the most progressive socialist candidate from now on, staying true to myself. And that's the tough part, man. It's we got to stay true to ourselves, but then make sure we're staying true to everyone else too, right? Because voting is not just about ourselves, right? It's really actually, I'd say, very little about ourselves, to be honest. If our votes are really democratic in mind, we're trying to balance the views of everybody, right? It's not just like my perspective in life. There's a lot of people I care about who have different standpoints, who have different perspectives, who have different experiences, who have different kind of impact beneath things, and I've got to weigh that shit into what I'm doing too. Otherwise, I think that's really myopic, and I would actually say, right, selfish, right? It's individualism, right? We wouldn't want to apply individualism to how we approach electoralism. That would certainly be feeding into what they want, probably, right? So I'd argue that in all actions, in all moments, we should fight individualism and really try to promote collectivism, up until that moment that you truly engage something that's fucking harmful, right? And then you gotta shift gears. So that is competitive time, by the way. When you encounter like legitimately harmful, malicious shit, that's when you get competitive. So I still believe in the voting process. That's fair, Cookie, right? For me, so like my perspective, just given like some of the stories from Iran and stuff, and just hearing like how fake the vote over there really is. For me, it's still something like that. I don't want to just like throw away, or like I don't want to inject like anti-voting rhetoric into the conversation. But I do think it's important probably for people to recognize that if you're really serious about combating fascism, electoralism, in my opinion, probably isn't even like the top one or two things you could be doing. Number one really is mutual aid, like hyper collective, hyper local mutual aid. Um, People are always like asking what that looks like, but like look up. So like for me, I would look up like what are the issues in Sacramento? What are the organizations that are like trying to do something about that? Can you help out like at a food bank, right? A food pantry. Can you help out like at a youth center, right? With some like after school programs or something for disadvantaged youths, right? If you can't go on site, can you help work on the online side of things, marketing or something, right? Or just like volunteer, like kind of promoting. Can you even promote their shit online? Like there's so many ways to get involved if we kind of get creative with it and we just kind of think about what can I do, what are my skill sets, what do I have access to. But then I also think like people got to get better about not just shitting on like what they think's not enough. Like the protest that just went down yesterday, I'm seeing a lot of negative commentary, and I'm not saying that I don't think some of the criticism is like more than warranted and accurate. But there's a lot of people who don't protest that were protesting yesterday, and to me that's positive behavior. I'd much rather see people on the ground protesting than like other things, right? And while I don't think it's enough, and it's just a moment, and we need to build on that momentum, and it's a beautiful way to kind of connect and show how we're feeling, and then keep doing more shit, right? When people engage in what I would say is like positive behavior, especially if it's something they don't usually do a lot of, and you want to keep building that momentum, the last thing you want to do is just hit them with a bunch of fucking negativity, right? You don't need negative reinforcement in that moment, right? And so I would ask the people that have a lot of negative shit to say about positive moments, even if there's not like criticisms that we could have, why do you feel the need to shit on that? Like, why do you feel the need to inject some form of negativity into that? Like, what is that offering? And I would say that's usually egotistical ass behavior. So, usually. I'm not God, I don't know everything. Yeah, to Shai's point, thanks to the likes, guys. I appreciate everyone being here. That's actually time tonight. Do me a favor. I'm going to be here Thursday night, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Bring someone if you can. That's my challenge. A friend, a family member, coworker, someone who you think would be receptive, someone you think needs to hear it. I don't know, take a chance. Check out the Substack. The link is in my bio. If you go to my TikTok page, I think you should be able to go to it up there. Click on that. I post about twice a week. I just posted something today. You might like it. You might hate it. Go check it out. But yeah, we're going live twice a week. If you miss it, we post to YouTube on the day after, right? So we post the lives on YouTube, Mondays and Fridays. So check it there if you missed the live. Appreciate you guys being here. Everyone have a great night. Be safe. And remember to mute the media.